how do you think that relates to how God is with His children?
Yeah, I think that has to relate a lot. I think the way God deals with us is that is indeed a father and son thing, father and daughter thing. I mean, there's so many there's stories in the Bible that talks about, we call it father, Abba, right? And that's really a very personal thing. We all know that Christianity is a close and personal kind of religion. It's not really a bunch of tradition. It's really more like an Abba Father kind of deal. Like
where God will leave us be and let us experience our own failures.
Sometimes we have to. He does. One thing that God will never violate is our freedom to choose. He will never violate our freedom to choose because He wants us to respond from the love that He gave us, not because He co-opted us, He manipulated us. No, God is not that kind of guy. Our God is a compassionate, forgiving, accepting, non-judgmental. He's very patient, very awesomely patient. I don't know. Nobody can measure His patience. His long-suffering. So He is willing to wait for us. And I think when we do find that relationship, having a tender heart with God, and just being dependent on Him, it's actually a dependent thing. We don't depend on ourselves anymore. We depend more and more to our Abba, our Father. I think we'll see greater things, greater than what Jesus Christ has. He actually said that in His Word. You see greater things than these. I think trusting God, having more faith in God. When I say that, I meant having an open heart, having a tender heart, a circumcised heart, right? That's because this is what it's all about. When we're talking about a circumcised heart, is all about being so dependent on God that, when it hurts, go to Him. When you're mad at Him, go to Him. And then you'll see how He'll take care of you, how He'll get a thread, tie at the tip of your lower garment to lift it up. You'll see, and then He will heal it. He'll heal it, whatever that thing is.
Now, you mentioned healing. How long was it before your son stopped complaining about the circumcision? How long was it?
About a week.
About a week?
About a week.
About a week. Now, after about 2 weeks, were they back to normal, do you think?
Pretty much.
Pretty much. When do you think they were totally back to normal? About a month?
Totally back to normal, it depends on a case-to-case basis. I think in
general,
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks they're back to normal.
Okay, now the reason I bring that up is because there's some people who say that circumcision is child abuse. I mean, and to be on their side, some people would say, well, gosh, it's so painful. These kids are going through all this pain. And, they mention a lot of other things, and they call it child abuse or mutilation.
Right.
Why would you say it's not child abuse? Why would you say it's not mutilation? Why would you say that?
I would say it's not child abuse, first and foremost, because God approves of it, right? I think that's the first answer that I can give. Second of all, I think child abuse can be defined as, the motivation in doing child abuse is negative. I think if you do it right, circumcision, it's an awesome learning experience. So that's why when I did have my circumcision with my kids, I took the time to explain to them how this is really a type of being a Christian. It's a type of our relationship with God. The foreskin being gone, our old self being gone, and being tender-hearted, and being exposed to God. So, and they're like that. My kids are very emotional. I'm okay with it. I know a lot of people don't like emotional people, but I think emotional people are good. They're just more in touch with their feelings.
When you say they're emotional, what do you mean?
When I say emotional, I mean, they don't present a false self. You see what you get, you know, but you'll see that there's hope in them too. They'll tell you their problem, but they'll tell you they're hopeful too. Not because of what they can do, but because of what their God can do for them. You know, I think David is a very emotional man. And you know what he was called in the Bible? God, a man after God's own heart. Most psalmists are very emo. You know, we were just reading about Jonah. Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh. He complained. He ran away. So it's okay to struggle with God. You know, some people may not like it, but God is okay with it. God is so big that He can take our complaints, our being angry, or our being sad, or being depressed, or being anxious, take it to something molded, to something beautiful. I think so that's what I mean by being emotional.
Very good. Any closing thoughts on circumcision you'd like to say as what circumcision means to you, and why, if somebody was thinking about circumcision, why should they do it from a spiritual point of view?
I think I've heard this said before. There are actually some physical benefits to it. When you do get married, so this is not really a closing, but it's just in addition to what we've already been talking about. In addition to the spiritual aspect, I think there's some physical. I've heard this where if you get married and eventually you get intercourse with your wife, the likelihood of cervical cancer is lower for those. So I'm sure there's studies already. So I'm not going to dwell on that. But I think in closing, I think circumcision is an amazing tool that we can use to crystallize the idea of getting rid of our false self, right? Our old self, and exposing that new self into this being like a childlike. It's being exposed and being tender-hearted to the caring of our Father. That I think is the beauty. So, because I think ceremonies are good in that sense because it's like an exclamation point, you know, to an event that happened to you. So, and I believe in the body. The body is used by God. So it is a good way of just remembering what it is to be a child of God. You know, truly tender heart and dependent on Him.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much for taking the time to explain circumcision to us.
You're welcome. You're welcome.